Loved
Very
your
nice.
book, by the way.
Oh, thanks
I
a lot.
really enjoyed it.
You read it? Why?
Yeah, I went to the book signing and it convinced me.
Did I
they
meet
also,
you?
They also, yeah, you signed my book. It was very, very
Where?
sweet of you at Barnes & Noble in Union Square.
Oh, you were there.
Yeah,
Yes,
it was
yes.
fantastic.
Oh, thank you for coming.
It's actually something that I wanted to touch on a bit. You've ventured into different avenues, in your career over the last few years, doing plays, doing books. How does that shape you as an actor? Having a different creative outlet.
Well, thank you for asking that and seeing and reading the book and everything. It's this very strange thing. Like I did this movie, it's written by Norwegians, and my mind would never be able to think in the way that theirs thinks. But because I'm acting in their movie and embodying their character for such a long period of time, it seeps into my mind in a way that ends up making me more versatile as a writer. If I was not kind of forced into these different areas of acting in other people's things, really wonderful writers' things, whether it be them, Joachim, who's Norwegian, or Woody Allen, who's more like me, or like Chris Terrio, who wrote the Batman movie, is this kind of brilliant guy. I would probably just be kind of stuck with my own voice, which would make me bored.
I do love the directors that you've worked with. There's such an eclectic mix, and I'm wondering for you, when you look back on collaborating with someone like Woody Allen, can you think of directors that made a massive impression on you that maybe changed your process?
Oh yeah. Well, Joachim Trier, who directed Louder Than Bombs, is probably the most unusual because he's Norwegian and English is his second language. So I was able to see kind of how he was taking this English script, English written script, English language script, but kind of filming it through this kind of European lens. He was able to kind of take an American family story and view it from an outsider's perspective. I think it creates an unusual feeling that it's both very familiar, because it's an American family, and also very objectively seen from a different perspective.
Yeah, and you mentioned in the past that one of the things that really attracted you to this project and working with Joachim was the fact that it was going to be a more naturalistic approach and you could kind of be in the moment. Why did that appeal to you, I wonder?
Well, with a movie like this, when it's an independent movie and a kind of a good character-driven story, you usually have about 15 to 20 days to film it, and it's a kind of a rush, and you never really get to kind of like experiment or indulge, as an actor on set because it's so quick. But this, because it was a European movie, they had more time, and so as you said, we got to kind of just have multiple experiences and multiple reactions to the same scene. My character in this movie is going through this kind of grief-ridden angst and abandoning his family, but a lot of his reactions to it are actually kind of surprisingly irrational, whether he's kind of laughing at himself or experiencing like all of the silly feelings that we have when we're doing things that are maybe under the umbrella of anguish.
He's dealing with, the death of a parent as he's becoming a parent.
Yes,
and I would imagine that's a difficult thing to capture, but having that time on set to explore that, did anything new develop? Did you start to understand the character in a different way?
Yes, I mean, my goal, is always to try to kind of maybe show an unusual aspect of it. So with this, my character is not only kind of enigmatic person who maybe you can't fully tell what's going on, but I think even more interestingly, he doesn't know what he's experiencing. So he's making all these bad decisions, but he's doing them in a way that at the time feels right. And it's funny to see somebody with great conviction making a terrible decision. And so there's probably that element that we were only allowed to discover by virtue of having so many days and by having such a great director.
And the end of the tour was another small film you did recently where it felt like that a bit. Did you take anything from that experience where it was a bit more theatrical, a bit more improvisational?
Yes, except that movie was the exact opposite of this in terms of the scheduling. We had the least amount of time to do that movie in the worst conditions. We were like in the coldest state in the Union, in the coldest winter they had ever had on record. So it was like a kind of miserable shoot, but the advantage of that kind of thing is that you build up this emotional momentum because you can't sleep for like a month and you're just in kind of horrible, difficult physical conditions, and you end up developing this, almost paradoxically, this kind of comfort and in the emotional momentum. So that can be helpful in another way. I guess if you're an optimistic person, you can probably find advantages to each thing.
Absolutely. Well, that film came across so well, obviously contrasting to this one, but it allows you to feel it more deeply, that you can tell kind of the situation these characters are in. But also, you mentioned Batman, and of course that's the hugest movie on the planet right now. For you, the fact that you actually were filming that and ventured off to film Louder Than Bombs in the middle of it, I can imagine stepping away from projects so vastly different and having to come back to it, take on another character and come back and find Lex Luthor again. How did you do that?
Well, I think of acting as a bit like playing the drums. You can't really do it on your own. So if somebody asks you to act in their thing, you should take the opportunity so that you can continue practicing your thing, even if the song is a little different. To extend the analogy past its point of relevance, it still is helpful to continue, performing or whatever it is, or learning how to not overdo something on camera, or learning how to explore a person's psychology in a way that's visible to an audience. So it was helpful for me to do this movie, which is a lot more kind of, subtle and quiet and, more internal than the Batman, of course, but is still kind of testing me in a way that's helpful.
And it's interesting because you've played so many different roles, but this character, I think it's allowing audiences to see you in such a different light. And I wonder, from an industry perspective, are people approaching you already, because everybody's seen this movie, are people approaching you with maybe different kinds of roles that they didn't envision you in prior?
No, I get 90% of the same weird stuff that I'm humiliated to receive. And then the 10% of stuff that's great that you would like to do. But yeah, no, most of the stuff is embarrassing, but that's more my fault than theirs.
I wonder if you could elaborate a bit more on something that you received that doesn't
I don't know,
fit.
if in a movie, the world can kind of pick out the 7 or 8 flaws that you're also aware of, and they then offer you to do those same things.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
But I would imagine that, having something that has had such a massive response, I feel like sometimes when you're working on small films, it takes people a long time to discover them. Now with VOD, of course, they're discovering a lot of films that you've done in recent years that were smaller. I think unjustly underrated, a lot of them.
Sure.
But, when people are immediately drawn to a project and so excited about it, is there a different feeling for you?
No, I try to cocoon myself from all of that stuff. I come from the theater where the reviews of plays and the notices about plays and the press comes out the day the play opens, so you still have to perform the thing. So I don't like to read anything about movies, or I don't watch the movies I'm in. I try to cocoon myself from all that stuff because movies have this other weird aspect of them, which is that they are very public. Occasionally they hit a pop culture public platform. All that stuff is so uncomfortable to me, or probably any person who's worried about that kind of thing. So I stay away from all of it.
Gotcha. Well, last thing.
Sure.
Is there a different area of the industry you'd like to pursue that you haven't yet, that you maybe like to take on?
I'd love to play in the NBA, and so if you're referring to industry as entertainment industry, then yes, that. I'm sitting by the phone, not losing sleep about it, but I haven't heard anything.
Take note, casting director. Wait, you want to actually be in the NBA or play an NBA player?
I want to be in the NBA.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, that's no fun.
You heard it here first, exclusive. Jesse Eisenberg retiring from acting. Great jump shot, possibly.
Everything, the whole
Everything,
package.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks,
Enjoy
nice
it
to see you.
tonight. So good to see you.